Point 10 in the grade 9 applied level course, and now we're looking at break-even points. And this is it's really the exact same thing we did last example with the running race where we had Ferd overtake Dref. Now we're looking at a break-even point is really the point where your revenues exceed or take over the costs. So if you have a business, you have to sell a certain amount of your product to pay for all the things, the fixed costs of your business, right? If you have a restaurant, you've got to pay rent. Even if you don't sell one cheeseburger, you've got to pay rent, right? So you have to sell enough cheeseburgers to overcome that cost. And in this example, with Ferd, he's selling bracelets. We're saying he needs 180 bucks, not books, just to get started, right? To get sort of, it says tools and advertising, so his base costs. And then he has to pay, into every bracelet he makes, he's got to put $2 in materials, right? That's like buying the buns and the cheese for your burger business. Okay, and then he sells each bracelet for $17. So we want an equation first for the cost of running his business, second for the revenue, and revenue means, which I don't know if you noticed, but I spelled that wrong, revenue. Revenue should be spelled like this. But revenue then is how much he earns, how much the company makes. And then there's this idea of, well, what is the break-even point, and what is meant by that, right? And really, if anyone who runs a business, what you care about is how much do you have to sell to make a profit, and that's break-even point. So for Ferd to make a profit, I mean, the answer's right there, but let's look ahead first at the answers to part A, and B. So A says write an equation for cost. So his costs are based on his N number of bracelets that he sells, because he has to pay $2 for every one of those. And then that fixed cost. So 180 is the fixed cost. So to run his business, he's got to pay 180 no matter what. Then he has to pay $2, or 2 times the number of bracelets that he sells. That's what this is. So his costs are here. His revenue, he makes 17 bucks a bracelet. So N is my number of bracelets, so he earns, his revenue is 17N. Now remember, that's not his profit. Profit is what you make after you pay all the costs. We can actually even use our graph after to look at his profits, right? But that's coming up with the two equations, okay? And then we just graph them both on the same line. I have to make my tape a little bit bigger again. I'm sorry, a little bit smaller so we can see the whole thing. Okay. So just looking at the graph that I made, and again, let's see how I choose my axes. I try to be clever about it because I don't it's hard to graph things when it's not just, 1, 2, 3, or, 5s or 10s or whatever. I chose 17. So I went up by 17, 17, 17, 17, 17. I went up by 17 every time on my dollar one, and the reason I chose that is because of this. I knew when I graphed it, it had to go up 17 for every number sold, so that's why I chose 17. It doesn't make it more accurate than another answer, just makes it easier to graph. Okay, so if you did the same question and chose something different for your scale, it's okay. I just wanted to make it easy. I'm kind of lazy. Okay, so I went up by 17s here just to make this part easy. My number sold, I went up by 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bracelets. Now here I'm skipping the step that we did in the last question. I'm not putting a table of values. We're going right to the graph, and we're going to use the equation to graph it. This one here, I'm going to start with this because it's easier, and I chose my scale accordingly. So 17N just means that for every time you go up by 1, you have to go up by 17. That's why I chose it. Up by 1, up by 1, up by 1. And that gives me it was easy to draw the graph, right? So my points are 17. If I was going to have the data points, right? He sells 1 bracelet, he's going to earn $17. He sells 2 bracelets, he's going to earn $34. 3 bracelets, 51, and etc. Okay? But I just use the slope, right? 1 bracelet, $17. 2 bracelets, $34, etc. Okay? This one was a little harder, the green one. The green one is its cost. Well, he starts, especially because here's a case where the scale I chose does not work for this one, as they sometimes don't. So I had to start at 180, so it's an estimate, right? So I'm going to say that's about 180. And it's going to be like that sometimes. You're not going to get a pretty number. And the slope is really small. It's only 2 for every one. So I have a really small slope, okay? So if that's, it's even probably a little bit inaccurate, but it's a very small slope. But you just do the best you can with it. the main thing that I want you to understand is here we are. As soon as my revenues cross and become bigger than the cost, right? So as soon as this point happens, what we call the break-even point, now I'm making money, right? And in fact, if you want to calculate his profit at any point, you just measure. So what's the difference between here and here, right? How much this distance here would represent his profit. I'm just going to throw that out there. So that is what, if he sells 17? If he sells 17 bracelets, then his profit would be, 221. This must be 235. So from he's at 235 here, and down here he's around maybe 210 or so. So he earns about 15 bucks, the difference between here and here. Okay? At this point, his profit is 0. But here, it's 15 bucks, and it looks like, you know, every bracelet he sells after, he has more and more and more profit, which makes sense. Okay? So the break-even point where he actually makes money is when that point crosses. And I think that's where the lines intersect. So they intersect, oh, by the way, how many bracelets is that? 14 bracelets. So the break-even point is 14 bracelets. Okay? So if he sells 14 bracelets, he makes money. Okay? So that's it. That's this lesson. So go ahead, work on a few more problems, and this is the end of the chapter. From now on, it's review. Okay? So good work, and get those questions done, get your assignment done, and then I'll give you some review work to work on.